Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday, and we are going to start diving into our unit grades after talking drafts for a few days, and we are going to start with the NFC quarterback rooms. We have some news to dive into, but Dennis, the 7th grade baseball season did not end the way you were hoping it would end.
2 straight rainouts, and the big fellow was supposed to take the mound in the last game too. So it was what it was. He was so close. Monday night, almost had his first dinger of the year. Bounced it off the fence at about 2 feet high, about a 250-foot shot to left field. I felt like he had a shot. On the other side, my son released his EP today, so if you're into thrash and heavy metal and you like the blah, or should I say the blah, go over to Spotify and look up Black Powder, all one word. The EP is called Immolation. It's fast and heavy. It's got some nice breakdowns.
Well, that'll be something to console for people to console themselves with. As they go through the weekend, another weekend with no real football. And we are being made to wait a little bit longer for the schedule release. They finally said that they will do it next Wednesday. It had traditionally been during this kind of week of the year, but NFL's stringing it out a little bit longer. So we'll have some of that to talk about next week. But there is a
meeting with bated breath.
Then I need them to do it so then I can start running the simulator and getting a feel for how I feel about these teams. Because in May, that's when you want to make your most locked in projections of how everybody's going to finish. We do have a couple of pieces of news. Allen Robinson signing with the Giants, Zay Jones signing with the Cardinals, and the Texans traded for former Rams receiver Ben Skowronek. I have to be honest, I don't understand the trading for Ben Skowronek, especially since they seem to have a million receivers now for the Texans. The Zay Jones signing might not be bad for the Cardinals, and I don't know what to make of Allen Robinson with the Giants, but how do these 3 moves hit you?
So New York needs depth. They don't have a big receiver that's an intermediate other than Darren Waller, who may or may not be playing this season. If he doesn't, then they're back to the more traditional type of tight end with Daniel Bellinger, who flashed during his rookie year. Darius Slayton is a bigger receiver, but he's a speed guy. He's the second coming of MVS, it seems. And then the rest of their guys are all slot guys, and then they added Malik Neighbors. I don't think that I'm going to count on any Allen Robinson fantasy viability, but I also don't think he's going to be a Kenny Golladay either. I think he'll be somewhere between fantasy viability and Kenny Golladay, which means he may be a little bit better for real football than he is for fantasy football. I'm with you. I like the Zay Jones signing. He gives them a bigger receiver to go. I know they let
they have Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch are probably the top 3.
And Jones can step into he feels like he's a Michael Wilson backup, which means given Wilson's injury history, he gets plenty of playing time. That passing game is going to run through Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride. So I don't know that they're going to throw the ball 600 times. They've got James Conner. They've got Trey Benson.
Yep, Trey Benson. They still have Michael Carter too.
Yep. They're gonna
Amari DiMarcado. They're building like a running game pieces.
Yeah, and their defense is improving. Gannon was a defensive coordinator in Philly, so the Zay Jones signing makes a little bit of sense. He may have the occasional flex-worthy value, but I think if I'm for fantasy, I probably want Zay Jones a touch more over Allen Robinson, but not by much. And as far as Ben Skoranek goes, what they need a third string tight end. I don't know.
I don't get they still have, we haven't seen a lot from John Mechie. Kind of had to work himself back after missing his rookie year. They took Xavier Hutchinson last year. He's still hanging around. They went and brought back Noah Brown. You obviously have Dell and Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. They're 2 or 3 deep at tight end because they took Cade Stover and they brought back Dalton Schultz, and they still have Brevin Jordan. I don't know where Ben Skoranek fits exactly.
Maybe he's a core special teamer, and they're looking at it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's going to make for some fierce competition though for the that wide receiver room went from last year one that we had questions about to
they got all the guys.
They got all the guys. Last piece of news, I'd like to see your best surprised face. Chicago came out today, and Matt Eberflus definitively said his quarterback one as of today is Caleb Williams, and I think that's pretty shocking. We all thought it was going to be Tyson Bagent, Brett Rippon, competition.
They're going to make him earn it.
They're going to make him earn it. I don't even know why they had to come out and say this. There must have been some kind of local media question, but I laughed when I saw the headline come across.
You traded a first round pick you just took 3 years ago at the position to draft this guy. He's not going to ride the bench. Your head coach is on the hot seat, and he needs to do something. You're surrounding him with weapons. I got to be honest. I could probably be serviceable with DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, and Keenan Allen at quarterback. But they're set. They're putting together a pretty good operation there for Caleb Williams, and nobody is surprised that he's the QB1 there.
Well, it's a good transition because today we are going to be talking about quarterback unit grades. And I just realized I can put this up, which will help you in addition to me reading them off. So we are going to be doing unit grades. We're looking at the NFC quarterback room. So I just put up the current depth charts from our lads. I will note with the Los Angeles Rams, they seem to be missing a key piece, which is Jimmy Garoppolo. And I don't know if they have him off there because he has a 2-game suspension, but I thought that was strange. But Dennis and I looked at all these, and we have ranked the rooms 1 through 16 and just doing the NFC today. We will be doing the AFC next week. I'm going to bump this down a little bit so you get the full NFC division headers, and we don't need as much of the ads. But I thought this would be helpful so you can see. Now, when we're talking about unit grades, we're not talking about the starters. If we were only talking about starters in the NFC, we would probably have a bit of a different order here. This is about the depth of your entire room. And why does this matter? Well, in 2022, 68 different quarterbacks started an NFL game. Last year, you might be thinking, well, that's kind of an anomaly, right? Last year, 66 different quarterbacks started an NFL game. There are 32 NFL teams. If you did that by 2, that would be 64. And as you can tell over the last 2 years, some teams have had to start more than two. Some teams have been lucky, have their guy make it the whole way. But the depth of your room at quarterback matters just as much as the depth of your room at running back and at receivers. So we're going to talk about that depth. Dennis and I are going to go 16-1. We're just going to go back and forth and share our spots. Dennis, I will let you lead off. What is your number 16 room?
So it was funny as you were talking about, locking in your takes next week when they release the schedules and all that. As I was looking at my my rankings and going, I just don't like that room there, and I probably moved around 8 different teams. I've got Tampa at 16. They have, Baker having a renaissance year with Dave Canales. They've got Kyle Trask and John Wolford and Zach and Ekstead, who I don't know who the hell that is.
That was an undrafted free agent. So the yellow ones are rookies, the ones that appear in yellow.
It's honestly, I tried to find a reason to have New Orleans last, but they drafted Spencer Rattler, and I'm like, I've got some hope there. But no, I think he's going to have some challenges with the new offense, and I know they brought in Liam Cohen, and I'm probably going to be wrong on this, but I've got Tampa at 16.
So for me at 16, it was a super easy call. I have the New York Giants. Daniel Jones, we saw one decent year in 2022. He parlayed that into a long-term contract. Wasn't great last year. Drew Lock, we've seen a couple of individual games over his 5 or 6 seasons that were great, but he's never really been a return on investment. I believe those two guys were actually taken in the same draft class, so kind of ironic they're there. Tommy DeVito was a fun story because of his agent, but if he's starting games for me, I have some concerns. I think Nathan Rourke, kind of a depth piece there, may not make the final. But if you're looking at that 3-man group, that to me,
I'd rather watch the Blue Man group.
Like you have Tampa Bay. I honestly think Baker Mayfield is head and shoulders above anyone that's in that New York Giants room. And while they don't have depth, so for me, I guess you would say the Giants have depth in terms that they have 3 guys who've started a game. But they don't have 3 guys I'd want starting a game for me. And the fact that they're really unironically talking about Drew Lock potentially being their starter this year makes me feel bad for Malik Neighbors. So I doxed him down a little bit. I'll be curious to see. I know you have him a couple spots higher than me, but who did you have at number 15?
So I got the aforementioned New Orleans Saints. I probably would have had New Orleans at 16 if they hadn't drafted Spencer Rattler. They got Jake Hayner, second-year guy, and Nathan Peterman's their 4. We've seen Peterman start games, not great, Bob, but he is he's a seasoned professional. Even if he is lacking talent, I think Spencer Rattler is gonna rise up the ranks here relatively quickly. I think he'll surpass Jake Hayner. I think it wouldn't surprise me if Peterman is the guy that they throw in a game if Derek Carr gets injured, but Rattler is the guy that they start if they've got a week to prepare. So I might be too high on Rattler. I feel like he's faced a lot of challenges in college, and he's really had to, he was judged on what he was like as a 17-year-old kid. And he didn't shy away from it throughout his college career. He just kept working and trying to get better. And some days it was good and some days it was bad, but he's got a live arm. We'll see what he can do with some NFL coaching. Dennis Allen's on the hot seat. It feels like going into this season. But I'm just not sold on Derek Carr. But I like Rattler as the guy that I would want that's not the starter, and that's why put the Saints above Tampa Bay.
You don't like Rattler as much as I do because I have their team higher. For me, at 15, I have the Minnesota Vikings. Quite a precipitous fall off for them. I know they went and took J.J. McCarthy. We'll see how that works. Currently our lads has him at number 1, but there's been a lot of talk that Sam Darnold, who's in there, may end up being the starter. Sam Darnold, we've seen him have a couple of good stretches, in 2022, the last 6 games or so to close out after Baker didn't make it there. Sam Darnold looked pretty good last year, mostly a clipboard holder, had a decent start in a no-pressure game at the end of the season when they were kind of all playing backups. What do you have there? Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall, those guys started games last year, and all that proved was you don't want those guys starting games for you. I don't think all 4 of these guys make the roster. 3 of them probably will. I think we're going to see 2 or 3 of these guys play during the season, and not just because of injury. I just think it's going to be a growing season. I like their weapons. I like their coaches potentially, but there's not a lot of great confidence and experience for me in that room, so I have them at 15. Dennis, who do you have at 14?
I have Daniel Jones and the New York Giants. He got injured. He had a great year a couple years ago, at least great by Daniel Jones standards. And it seemed like he was set up to go into the next year. And, we said they were a year early. We felt like that the Giants had some potential. Now they've kind of fallen apart with not really having any weapons, and Darren Waller's their number 1 receiver, and he can't stay healthy. They let Saquon Barkley walk. But Daniel Jones if I'm thinking about it from a fantasy perspective, he's big, he's mobile. I think he may get a little more groundwork this year. I don't know that Drew Lock is a serious threat to Daniel Jones unless Daniel Jones gets injured. Lock has just never been able to put it together in the NFL. I suppose some would argue he never really put it together in college either. He's just a guy with a big arm. And DeVito, for all of his warts, he's got the makings of, just kind of being that grinder, career number 3 quarterback that you don't really want to play, but he's going to be cheap and he'll stick around. He's going to learn your offense and he'll play it the way you need him to. You don't want DeVito starting. We saw that last year, and yeah, it was a fun story. But I'm expecting a bit of a bounce back here from Daniel Jones, even with still some less than stellar depth at the receiver positions. They did add Allen Robinson. Let's not discount that. And Malik Neighbors.
Well, and I thought Wandale ended the season pretty strong. It's just hard to tell because his good games came, long after Jones was out. What is the chemistry going to be? I think there's still questions about Waller. We'll get to, the rest of the offense around them. For me at 14, I have Tampa Bay, a team you already talked about. I love Baker. I love what he did last year. I still believe in him. They have nothing behind him that would give you any sense of confidence. Kyle Trask, I don't think he's never started a game. I don't even know how many snaps he's been in. Wolford, I think, started 1 game when the Rams were in some desperation mode during that season that they kind of bottomed out. So there's just nothing behind him. So as much as I like Baker, I couldn't justify going any higher. Who do you have at 13?
I have the Minnesota Vikings. They spent a first-round pick on J.J. McCarthy, and it feels like that seems to be my phrase today. It feels like.
Well, I mean, it's May, so.
They spent a first-round pick on McCarthy. He's their quarterback of the future. Darnold is transitioning into that number 2 guy that he's got a couple more seasons, I think, of chasing a starting opportunity. And then he moves into the Charlie Whitehurst category, the Chase Daniel category, where, he's a guy that you want on your team. He's going to do the right things. Darnold's probably 27, 28 years old now.
Yeah.
And what's that?
Yeah, I think he's 28 or 29.
So, he's been in the league a while. He's faced some adversity and he keeps fighting. And that's the kind of guy you want on your team. And so I like McCarthy as a guy that can maybe step up. He's played with a chip on his shoulder all through college because he wanted to go to Ohio State, and Ohio State didn't offer him. So he went to their rival and fought his way. He ran Joe Milton off, fought his way into the starting job, beat Ohio State two or three times, became a first-round NFL draft pick, and that's something that you can't teach, that kind of fight. And I may have Minnesota too low at 13. The other guys they have, Nick Mullins, we've seen him, he's a backup caliber quarterback, but we've seen him come in and in short stretches be able to win some games and play well. Jaron Hall was clearly overmatched last year, but he may, with a year under his belt now, he may be a guy that can develop into a backup quarterback. So I don't know. Maybe I might have Minnesota a little too low,
or a little too high. For me at 13, I have the Saints, the team you had at the bottom. I like Derek Carr more than you, but I always have. And my question there is probably Haener and Rattler. They were both later round selections, kind of flyer development guys. At least Haener has 1 year in the system, was their QB3 last year. But I do like Rattler. I thought he was clearly the number 7 quarterback in this class. That'll be interesting. I wouldn't be shocked if Peterman either doesn't make the team at all or ends up on the practice squad. Who's number 12 for you?
Number 12 is the Seattle Seahawks. They've got a shallow room right now. It's just Geno and Sam Howell. And as much as I like Sam Howell, I don't know that he's a future NFL starter. Maybe, he's got some moxie. He's a good enough athlete, if not fast. Geno had a great year under Dave Canales, then proceeded to return to form that we've seen for the first 8 years of his NFL career. It'll be interesting to see what happens up there in Seattle with the new offensive coordinator, new philosophy. Does Geno bounce back and perform more like he did under Dave Canales, or will it be Sam Howell time? What kind of depth do they add to the room? It's a shallow room, but I do like Sam Howell. He was my QB1 in that class, if that tells you how strong that class was.
Yeah. No, we've seen how strong it was. 12 for me is the Detroit Lions, and this is no shade at Jared Goff. I love Jared Goff. I think he's a great and quality, incredible starter. They don't have anything behind him. Hendon Hooker basically had a redshirt season as a rookie. Last year, they had Teddy Bridgewater, a veteran backup that you could feel good about. So, Nate Sudfeld, Hendon Hooker, if those guys had to come in, I don't know what we're getting. And you're talking about a Super Bowl caliber team, I think, in the Detroit Lions. Gives me a little bit of pause. So as you'll see, kind of in this range for me, it's I may love your starter, but I have no faith in what's behind them. So that's kind of this range of the NFC for me. But who do you have at number 11?
I actually have the Detroit Lions, so we're not too far apart right there. I like Hendon Hooker more than you. I mean, he was a Heisman candidate his senior year before he injured his knee. And I know he's an older prospect. He was 24, 25 when he came out of college. He's got some tools that Jared Goff doesn't. It's going to come down to can he play well in the Detroit offense when he gets the chance? the redshirt year I think was great for him, and he got his knee healthy again after getting it tore up. Sudfeld was a guy that had a little bit of promise as a backup. I don't know if I think he's probably maxed out here as a QB3. Maybe he's more of a QB4. So it wouldn't surprise me if they try to sign somebody else to their depth chart. I think teams are recognizing the importance of having a quarterback or two on their practice squad that can learn your offense. And if something goes haywire and you get a couple injuries, you've got people that are familiar with what you're doing. So I think Jared Goff has played very well since he came to Detroit. He's had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he stepped in, and Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have believed in him, and he's delivered for them. We'll see if that defense comes around. They could be a contending team this year if the defense can step up, and Jameson Williams or some other receiver can be a viable number 2 there. I like what Detroit's doing, and I wanted to put Detroit higher. And in retrospect, I think maybe I guess I couldn't put Detroit. I couldn't put Jared Goff ahead of Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, and Hooker could be a good prospect. I'm not necessarily saying he's not a good prospect, but he has 0 experience, and so it'll be an interesting behind him. At 11 for me, I have the Washington Commanders. Jaden Daniels, highly drafted rookie. They're going to pour into him. I like the coaching staff. Mariota and Driscoll are veterans who are backups who have played, who could play. I don't know. I think Jake Fromm probably ends up being the odd man out here. Sam Hartman strikes me as kind of a development prospect, probably a practice squad guy. They have some depth. They probably have a better, second option than some of the teams below them. But a lot of it, Mariota's bounced around a lot. We're pretty far. It feels like we're pretty far removed from when he was in that quarterback series on Netflix, and we thought he was going to be some kind of a great starter for the Atlanta Falcons. He's kind of squarely into that journeyman backup phase. Not a bad backup, but a lot of this is going to rise and fall on Jaden Daniels. Who do you have at 10?
I've got the Commanders at 10. I know that Jaden Daniels is coming in there hot. I'm putting a lot of stock in him. They've got Jeff Driscoll, Jake Fromm, and they even brought in Sam Hartman. So they go 5 deep on their depth chart here. Mariota, he seems like it feels like he's going to be a good backup for Daniels because they both have plus mobility. Driscoll, the third QB, also has good mobility. But Daniels is the starter there, and they've got some decent weapons in Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, solid running game with Brian Robinson and now Austin Eckler. Zach Ertz at tight end with Ben Sinnott and Cole Turner behind him. There's some potential there to be a decent team. It's going to come down to how ready is Jaden Daniels going to be? Because we've seen that Mariota can't throw anymore. He technically can throw, just nobody knows where it's going when he does. And
yeah, if they this is one of there's a couple of rookie situations where they have a veteran backup that may, end up starting the season. This isn't one where I think that's going to happen. I was listening to the NFL Network guys, and they said they think Washington erred in not keeping Sam Howell to have a quality backup. So we'll see how that goes too. My number 10 is the other rookie that we know will start opening day, and that's Caleb Williams, our newly anointed QB1 in Chicago. I like Caleb Williams. I have him up in my top 12 in Dynasty ranks. I think he's going to have a good season. I think they've surrounded him with some people. Behind him, Tyson Bagent was a fun story, but not incredibly impressive as a quarterback behind him. And, Brett Rippon is kind of a fill out the roster, backup, break glass in case of emergency guy. So again, you have a young starting quarterback that I think has upside and potential, but doesn't have any experience yet in the NFL. And you have backups that don't wow me. So, Caleb Williams, you'd think, oh, surely that room's got to be up in the top half of the draw. I just couldn't bring myself to put him higher than 10. So last one in the bottom half of the draw at number 9. Who do you have at number 9?
So at 9, I have the Los Angeles Rams. And, I mentioned earlier, I just couldn't bring myself to put Jared Goff over Matthew Stafford. That may be a mistake. Stafford's an older quarterback with some back issues. And they have a pretty shallow backup room with Stetson Bennett and Dresser Wynn. I don't even know who Dresser Wynn is. And Stetson Bennett seems like he's been in witness protection since they drafted him.
Their primary backup is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah. So I don't know what that says. Garoppolo's been anointed the guy, it seems like 5 times in the last few years. And he just can't seem to stay healthy and hold on to it. But I like Matthew Stafford, and he's got a slew of weapons there with Kupp and Nakua and Williams and now Corum. So if he can stay healthy for the next couple years, for this year, then there's a good chance that Rams team can go far even while they rebuild the defense.
So at 9 for me, I have the Green Bay Packers. I loved what Jordan Love did last year. He does look like he's going to be a good starter. I have a bit of pause when we come to their backups. Sean Clifford wasn't really a highly rated prospect coming out, and obviously got no experience in the NFL. Was their primary backup last year. I didn't feel good about it last year. Probably don't this year. I like Michael Pratt as a prospect, so that's an interesting one. But again, a rookie coming in, so I like Love quite a bit. We've still only seen him do it for 1 year, but last year at this time, I had Green Bay as my number 16 team. So the fact they vaulted all the way up here at 9, I think makes them probably the biggest jumper for me. There might be one a little higher that's another big jumper, but the lack of depth is what separates for me. And the guys I have in top 8, all of them have a number 2 that I think if their number 1 goes out, I'd feel not too bad about. So how about first we move into the top half? Who is 8 for you?
So I have the Carolina Panthers at 8, and they probably have the best number 2 quarterback in this group in Andy Dalton. But Dalton is starting to get up there. He's getting pretty old. He came in last year. They started in one game. It was almost like, Bryce Young was struggling, and they put Dalton in and said, hey, show this kid what to do. He went out and had a really good game, and then they put Young in for the whole rest of the season and let him faceplant. And I'm like, you just saw Dalton be successful. Why don't you just let the kid learn? But I've got high hopes for Bryce Young. I don't know. It feels like this is about right, and Dalton is really what's propping this room up. Jack Plummer's the number 3, so they don't have much beyond Dalton. This is the situation, I think, that if they lose their starting quarterback, they may actually improve. And so maybe I should put them higher, but they don't have really anything after those 2. And some of the other, I like the starters a lot more on everybody ahead of it.
Number 8 for me, it was a tough call, but I went with the San Francisco 49ers. And this is no offense to Brock Purdy. I think he's on a...
oh, no. That was very offensive to Brock Purdy.
I think he's done a good job. They brought Josh Dobbs in now to be the backup. They have Brandon Allen. I think Tanner Mordecai, probably a practice squad guy. The 49ers have been a team that have had to rely on a couple of quarterbacks. Josh Dobbs, the bloom came off the rose for me a little bit, the way he ended in Minnesota. I think he's a bridge or a spot starter guy. It's been a couple of years since we've seen Brandon Allen get forced into action. A decent depth. So I like their depth overall, but, their number one probably isn't as high for me as the number ones on the teams above them. And so that's where they kind of ended up for me. Who do you have at 7?
At 7, I have the Chicago Bears. I guess I'm a believer in Caleb Williams, and I know that it may get screwy if he gets injured. But Tyson Bagent is a guy that came out of a small school into a great big giant opportunity. He went from being a big fish in a little pond to being a little fish in an ocean, and he swam. He did just fine. Having a year under his belt to be able to get some more experience and become an NFL pro. Do I think he's going to develop into an NFL starter? Probably not. Do I think he could develop to be as good or a little better than, say, Josh Dobbs? I think so. I think he's got that in him. And I'm going to go ahead and roll with the Bears here. Brett Rippon, he's a serviceable third quarterback. In the real world, you don't want to be throwing these third quarterbacks out there. And
Unless you're Denver, which actually ironically started him. I mean, Brandon Allen, who I just mentioned, actually has started a game in the last 7 years for the Broncos too. Just look in the quarterback 3 column, and you'll probably find Denver, because I'm pretty sure we started Jeff Driscoll too. This is not great for me. At 7, I have the Seahawks. You're right; they have a shallow room. I liked the addition of Sam Howell. I think with some better coaching, which they might get in a little bit better situation. We saw Geno Smith be QB6 in 2022. A little bit of a fall off last year. When Dave Canales left, now they've gotten a different offensive coordinator. They have a different head coach, maybe a different philosophy. I liked that tandem enough and the potential of that tandem. That's one of the teams too, where I don't know if you see any fall off if the starter comes out and you have to go to number 2. So I landed them there. Who is your number 6?
At 6, I've got the Green Bay Packers. Again, it's I was looking at just how good is Jordan Love. I know he only did it 1 year, but I feel like he's here to stay. Sean Clifford is not an ideal number 2.
He could end up being good too. We've never seen him play. It's just we don't know.
I'm in Big Ten country. I've seen him play.
But you haven't seen the NFL version.
But we could see, if Clifford has to play, they're going to protect him. They've got Josh Jacobs. They've got Marshawn Lloyd. Michael Pratt, he was there were some guys pumping Pratt up as being the 7th quarterback in this draft. I think that Rattler was the guy, but Pratt was probably the next guy. So there's potential for Pratt to develop. Do I expect it this year? Probably not. But I've got a lot of faith in Jordan Love. I think he's got a lot of tools around him, and they're going to continue to grow. It's a young offense with a very good head coach. And so I've got the Green Bay Packers at number 6.
6 for me is the Los Angeles Rams. I love Matthew Stafford. I love his marriage with Sean McVay there. I think he came back strong from injury. And honestly, I think they might have the best number 2. Jimmy Garoppolo may not have had a wonderful 2023, but he's only, 2 years removed from being in the NFC Championship game. And he was a very productive starter in 2022 for the 49ers. He just got hurt at the end. and Purdy came in and they didn't want to pay him. So I like that pairing. I'm not so sure we'll ever see Stetson Bennett. I think he's still away from the team. I don't know what happened there. They've never really said. I've given up whether we're going to see him ever, but I like the top two pairing at least there. So we're coming into the top five. Who is number 5 for you?
So I was kind of messing around with my 4 and 5 here, and I ended up moving Arizona down to number 5 from number 4 while we were talking. Clayton Tune and Desmond Ritter as backups are a couple guys I think that you won't have to change the offense too much if they go out, but they're not as good as Kyler Murray. Ritter's very mobile. Clayton Tune's pretty mobile. I like Kyler Murray a lot. He's got some nice new weapons in Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. and now Zay Jones. So they've got a lot of potential. Murray, though, I think he's gotten injured a couple times in the last few years. I think we're in for a healthy season from him this year. I just, when I looked at the top 5, it was really, I started leaning heavily on their starters when evaluating their depth.
Yeah, number 5 for me, I went with the Carolina Panthers. I really like Andy Dalton as quality backup. Bryce Young was the number 1 overall pick for a reason last year. I think they've invested in coaching, line, and weapons to try to build him up in year 2 to give him a better solid footing. I think just having a coach that's willing to and wants to work with him might be a step up based on what we got in the wake of Frank Reich leaving last year. So I liked that tandem enough to pull them up there. Who is your number 4?
I've got the San Francisco 49ers at 4. Basically, for the last couple seasons, I've been looking for reasons not to believe in Brock Purdy. And, the dude just throws touchdown passes. And I know Josh Dobbs is kind of flash in the pan, but he's a solid backup. You don't want – Dobbs is a guy that, come in and start a few games, is going to be fine, isn't going to put a team on his shoulders. Purdy, so his mobility is underrated. He ran, I think, a 4.56 40 at the combine. He is executing the Shanahan offense flawlessly, it seems. And I think that Josh Dobbs will be able to step in and kind of Dobbs, I think, has found a home as a backup. He should, if he's got any sense at all, he should do whatever he can to just stay there and back up Brock Purdy and win NFC West titles, playoff games, and Super Bowls and hold the clipboard. It's a lucrative career.
I know it's been kind of, I was mildly surprised that Sam Darnold wanted to move somewhere else. I would have, but we will see. Number 4 for me, Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray, when he came in to play the back half of last season, looked really good and comfortable in the offense. They've only gotten better weapons. I think he's vibing well with this coaching staff. I liked the move to go and acquire Desmond Ritter. I like him a little bit better as a number 2, as a backup guy, than probably as being getting thrust into that franchise role. Hopefully he can learn a little bit behind Murray, recover. Hopefully this will be a good step for him kind of moving forward. And then, Clayton Tune did not look good when he got forced into the lineup last year. More of a development guy. But I like the pairing at the top there. You and I have the same top 3 in the same order. So I will just say number 3 for us is the Dallas Cowboys. Their current room is Dak Prescott, Cooper Rush, and the former number 3 overall pick, Trey Lance. For me, I like Dak's upside. We saw Rush come in as a pretty quality backup to win games, and then they have kind of a interesting development prospect in Trey Lance, which was a little bit why I elevated them up.
Well, I don't know how much longer he's going to be an interesting development prospect. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so
why are you going to pay a guaranteed $25 million to a guy that Trey Lance is not going to command anywhere near that in the market?
That is correct. And how are they going to want to keep him around though? I liked what Cooper Rush did when he came in and filled in for Dak when he got injured a couple seasons ago. This looks like a team that's going to throw the ball a lot. I think it plays on my heart that they brought Zeke back, but they're gonna throw the ball. This is CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott. That's where
both of them playing for contracts.
Yeah, that's where this team is going.
Number 2 for us is a team that I think may have the best 3 deep of any team, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. They acquired Kirk Cousins, who's progressing well, according to reports today. They drafted Michael Penix Jr., who is one of the more interesting prospects in this draft. And they have Taylor Heineke, who, where you may not want him as your franchise guy, has been a very serviceable quarterback and a guy who's come in and played games and won. They go 3 deep at the position. Probably the biggest riser for me on this list is the Falcons, who went from a lot of questions last year to a lot of upside to me going into 2024.
Yeah, I concur. I think that Kirk Cousins is primed to have a big season with Bijan and Pitts and Drake London. And if it looks like his contract's going to keep him there for a good couple years before they can, not eat a Russell Wilson-esque bite of dead cap, which will be good for Penix. I know Penix is a little bit older as a prospect, and, you probably in a perfect world, you don't want that. But at some point, you've got to build a team for now and for the future. They set up a nice succession plan. It is kind of funny that, basically it's come out that the reason Cousins didn't re-sign with Minnesota was because they said they were going to draft a quarterback high. And then he goes to Atlanta, and Atlanta drafts a quarterback high.
So the message, as always, don't tell the guys what you're planning to do.
That's right. So Heineke is probably the best number 3. I don't think I'm as high on him as you are. I think that he's a lot of flash, but doesn't really get a whole lot done.
I mean, I don't think Heineke's great, but I think as a number 3, he's better than a lot of these teams have as a number 2.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but anyways, so at number 1.
At number 1, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a couple development prospects in Tanner McKee and Will Grier. But this is really about Jalen Hurts, which I don't know about you, Dennis, but I have him as by far the best quarterback in the NFC. So that's a great place to start. And I like that Philadelphia went out and acquired Kenny Pickett to be their backup. Things did not work great for him with Pittsburgh, but I actually like him as a number 2 here. So it was a pretty easy call for me to vault the Eagles to number 1.
Yeah, Pickett has he's got plenty of starts under his belt in the first couple years. He's faced some adversity. He's not going to supplant Jalen Hurts, but we need Jalen Hurts to get back to form. He had an off year last year. It seemed like he was injured a bit. They've re-upped both of their wide receivers there in Philadelphia. They brought in Saquon Barkley. This team looks locked and loaded, and Jalen Hurts looks like he's primed for a big year. And I agree. I think that Kenny Pickett as a backup, as a number 2, do I like him better than Andy Dalton? Yeah, probably because he's younger. I don't know if I'd probably rather have Sam Howell because he was my guy. but Pickett's probably the second, and I'd probably go with Michael Penix because he's a highly rated rookie. So Pickett's probably the number 2 quarterback in this group. And if everything goes right, Pickett never sees the light of day. But if he does, I think you can, it'll take a couple games before A.J. Brown starts bitching.
I mean, he just got paid, so he might be okay for a little while. Before we get out of here, let me ask you a couple of questions. Thinking how these teams, trying to remember back to where they were last year, who do you think is the biggest jump up for you in quarterback rooms in the NFC from 2023?
Probably Chicago. It hurts me to say that. They have really improved because of how much of a better thrower that Caleb Williams is. I like the addition of Pickett to Philadelphia. I think that New York improves just getting Daniel Jones back healthy. That makes them a lot better. Seattle, I think, has improved a lot because I think I want Sam Howell over Drew Lock by a big margin. Yeah. I don't think Drew Lock was the heir apparent to Geno, but I could see Sam Howell getting a shot to be the guy when Geno's done.
Might be a reason they didn't take a QB. I think I mentioned for me, it's got to be Atlanta because I'm pretty sure I had Atlanta, 14 or 15 last year because we had a lot of questions about
you
Ritter.
Didn't like that Mariota Ritter pairing?
It wasn't Mariota and Ritter. It was Ritter and Heineke. And I can't remember their old number 3 quarterback. It was the guy that oh my God, I'll think of it. Plus I didn't trust Arthur Smith, but when you add in Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix, and I like Heineke a lot better probably as my QB3 than I did as my potentially QB1. We weren't sure whether it was going to be Heineke or Ritter last year, and at times it was both of them, and neither of it worked out. Which of these teams do you think their room has fallen off the most for you since 2023?
Well, they don't, Detroit fell off. I think that Bridgewater was a pretty solid backup. I don't know. I think most all of them got a little bit better. The Rams, having Stetson Bennett as your number 2.
He's not there.
I forget who they had to start the season, but bringing Carson Wentz in last year, that they probably have fallen off.
Yeah, I think the Saints took a hit for me. Jameis Winston being behind Carr felt a little bit better, but my biggest faller probably Minnesota. And maybe McCarthy hits. Like I said, this time last year, I was skeptical about Green Bay just because we hadn't seen it. We didn't know what we had, and there wasn't a lot of depth of experience in that room. I kind of feel the same way about Minnesota. Maybe Minnesota ends up being a big riser for me next year. But, Mullins and Hall did not look great when they got thrown out there last year. Sam Darnold has been seemingly consummately hit or miss throughout his career. And, McCarthy made a lot of hay in the draft based on people's need at quarterback and a great national championship run. But, playing in the NFL is a little different. They have a good core of receivers, but we shall see. So let me ask you this, Dennis. Which of these rooms is the biggest question that could go either way for you?
Probably Washington and Chicago because they have rookies, and you just have it's tough. And Minnesota, I guess, for that matter as well. When you draft a rookie high, it's because you're bad typically, and then you bring a rookie that's expected to start into a bad situation, it's very mentally taxing. And so we're looking at these teams and trying to figure out like who is going to, who's setting their rookies up for success. Because we've seen guys come in, Mac Jones, for instance, and go to a shit situation. Praise Belichick all you want. Mac Jones got the shaft. Trey Lance, it never worked out for him. We've seen guys come in with high pedigrees. Justin Fields, if I'm him, I'm like wanting to put a hit out on somebody in Chicago because they're doing everything for Caleb Williams that they didn't do for him. And it was rough. So you want to see these rookies. I probably feel best about Minnesota if something goes wrong with the rookie, because Darnold, I want Darnold over Mariota or Bagent.
It's probably true. For me, I think my biggest question mark is Carolina. I vaulted them up because I like the pairing and I like the potential of growth with Dave Canales. But Bryce Young struggled last year. It's undeniable he struggled last year. I have a good feeling about them, but could they bottom out? They sure could. Well, that'll do it for us for today. A little bit of fun there, getting to look at these quarterback rooms in the NFC. And if you thought some of those quarterback rooms had some questions, wait till Tuesday when we take a look at the AFC quarterback rooms, because let me tell you, the bottom third of those rooms, and I'm going to include my personal favorite team in there, might make you weep.
I have questions. First, how dare you?
Yeah.
Where's our boy CGCL222? He's on the clock still.
Chris Clarkson.
Yeah, is that who it is?
Yeah, he's in Nashville with Ricky, I believe. So I don't know. I'll ping him, but we shall see.
I don't know. I've got 4 or 5 drafts going on, and not up to picking any of them. So
same.
I've got and like they're all on different platforms. Oh no, the second one, I just had a second one start on Flea Flicker. So I got 2 on Flea Flicker, 1 on Sleeper, 1 on MFL, and 1 on Underdog.
Getting it done. Well, that'll do it for us today. If you need something to pick you up this weekend, maybe you hit a rough, slow spot in the draft. Dennis, the last few episodes, we talked nothing but rookies and dynasty drafting. How can they get a hold of that?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform, punch in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, listen to us while you're doing your yard work and all that other fun stuff.
Well, that'll do it for us today, and we will be back to cry together about some of the AFC quarterback rooms on Tuesday. Until then, you guys have a wonderful week.